Hey folks, Sam from the Eventbrite Boost team here. I hope you're all having yourselves a fantastic day. And in today's video, we're going to be walking you through the process of how to create the Instagram Growth Playbook and how to audit and assess the performance of the Instagram Growth Playbook. Now, if you want to jump straight to the auditing section, we've linked it down below, so feel free to skip to that chapter. But let's go ahead and dive straight into creating the playbook here. But first, to give you a little context of how to navigate to this section to get started, you'll want to be in the Marketing tab after you've gone to the Manage My Events section. And then once you're in here, you'll want to look for this area that says Grow Your Instagram Following. Just go ahead and click on this card right here, and it will take you straight into the place where you need to go to create this campaign. Alternatively, if you are in the interface already, you can simply navigate to the Playbooks area to find this campaign. But before we get started, just to give you a little bit of context, the Instagram Growth Playbook is an Instagram story swipe up ad that's designed to send people to your Instagram profile to help you gain new Instagram followers, to basically increase your brand awareness, grow people discovering your brand, and foster new customers discovering your events. And we've also found it's a great way to expose people to your organic ad strategies once they end up following you. And if your link in your bio links over to your website or a place where people can purchase tickets, we often find this campaign is not only a great mechanism of discovery for people to discover your events, but it makes it very easily accessible for them to purchase once they find out a little bit more about who you are, who your brand, and who your organization is. So to go ahead and get started, what we will want to do in this section is simply click this New Campaign button to navigate over to the campaign creation interface. You'll first begin by going ahead and selecting the Facebook ad account that you would like to finance the campaign with. So just as a reminder, the cost of the campaign is going to get billed to whatever card is on file for the Facebook ad account you select. So make sure you select the right one. And then after that, we're simply going to choose the Facebook and Instagram page. You might be asking, Sam, this is an Instagram story ad. Why are we choosing a Facebook page? Remember, Facebook and Instagram are linked. So simply choose your Facebook page that your Instagram is linked to, and we'll automatically pull the Instagram account. And then after that, you're simply choosing a Facebook pixel if you have one of those for remarketing purposes that you would like to incorporate. Now, in the next step, you're simply choosing the schedule and budget for your campaign. In regards to the schedule, most of our customers run this as a continuous type of ad campaign where they're allocating a small daily or monthly budget to every single month. Think of this almost as a digital type of calendar ad, where calendar ads basically serve as a purpose for brand new people to discover the events that we have on sale. This is basically a digital version, especially if you do a lot of organic marketing, as people will go to your Instagram page, find out more about your brand, business, organization, and the upcoming events. So if you want to run this with the continuous option, feel free to leave this little slider checked right here, or if you want a designated end date, feel free to uncheck it, but you can always pause the campaign when it's running continuously to entirely stop it. So most people roll with the continuous option. And to go ahead and get started, we'd probably recommend a daily budget of around $5 a day. $5 a day is kind of the sweet spot for the number of audiences that we end up using here. And I would also recommend, if you're just getting started here, sometimes we don't get it right off of the first go with the creatives and targeting that we end up using. So I'd recommend be a little bit more conservative with the budget to start, to get a feel for how this actually works for you before you jump all in with this. And once you kind of get a feel for what's working, you can always scale these budgets up if you want to have a greater impact with your campaign down the road. And there is no maximum budget as well, so if you wanted to spend $50 a day on this, you are more than welcome to, but please test it out a little bit first to see how your creative and how your targeting works together before you start scaling. So once we've done that, we are simply going to be uploading the image or video that we want to use with this campaign. Now, if you don't have any content to work with, we actually will automatically generate an image for you, and we have an integration if you hit the Add Images button that you can use to design your own creative. But in all recommendations, this is strictly designing image content, and this campaign performs substantially better with video content. So in all honesty, what I would recommend doing is, if you have good video content to work with, or you could kind of take a pause, get a little bit of video content made before you pursue this type of campaign, I would highly recommend it. And what you are going to want to use is you're going to want to use a 1080p by 1920p vertical Instagram story asset. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in this asset here that I think is a fantastic example by one of our customers, Foodieland, right here, where they use that full-size creative. They showed some really engaging video content. They basically gave individuals context on, what were they getting into when they swiped up on this. So just the general takeaways, video content normally always outperforms image content for these types of campaigns, and also make sure that you're using full-size content. if you're using something that's horizontal or doesn't quite fit, it's not going to look as professional, and people notice that it might come across more as an ad. We want to be blending in with the different types of organic content that we see. So just kind of briefly talking about this one, I love this ad as they're using really awesome, fun, engaging video content. They give a little bit of context with this overlay on who their brand or their organization is, and in this case they were advertising a specific event in particular, so they gave a little context on what's that event, a little bit of like a swipe up here too, just kind of language down towards the bottom to get people to kind of swipe up on that ad to check things out. And just a reminder, this ad is directing back to your main Instagram profile, so you could use some sort of language that says like, swipe up to follow on Instagram or something like that. But it's very nice because both call to actions essentially, so the one towards the bottom that people are swiping up, or even if they click to your kind of profile icon on the top left, it'll be taking them directly back to the Instagram profile. So almost no matter where they click in the ad, it'll direct them back to your profile to discover. And now if you are spending a little bit bigger of a budget on this campaign, you could always A/B test a couple different images or videos. But if you're only spending around $5, please don't go crazy with A/B testing, as remember, when we add in more variations, that budget is spread more thinly across the different audiences or ad sets that we're leveraging here, and it basically is going to have your campaign optimized slower and maybe perform a little bit worse. So I'd say don't go crazy. Generally try to stick to the video content that you have it, and then if you potentially might be spending a little bit more, you could maybe include like 2 or 3 videos just so people are seeing different content when they come across this. And then once we're done with that, we'll simply hit continue to hop to the final step of the campaign, which is specifying the targeting that we would like to do. So for those of you that are already familiar with Facebook targeting, the thing that we're working with right here is interest-based targeting. And for those of you that might not have done much with Facebook before, what interest targeting is it's a way for you to target people on Facebook and Instagram that basically share a specific interest. So normally what you generally want to try to do is just type out things related to your event. So in this example, our creative that we were using was for a food festival. So I might just go ahead and type in a food festival to start to kind of see what different things we get. Perfect. So we'll go ahead and select that. I might try typing out food one more time just to kind of see what I get here. Maybe target people interested in food, which it's a lot of people in the area. And then I might try typing out things like maybe I'm hosting my event at night or something like that. So maybe entering in something like nightlife here in this section. You're just generally trying to think of interests related to your event that, individuals that kind of share these affinities might be really, really likely to love the content that they're looking at, swipe up or click to your profile to discover more, and then potentially attend your events down the road. So generally all that we're trying to do here is just type out various related things. If your competitors also are available as interests, we could type stuff out like this. Food Network, South Beach and Wine Food Festival, it's a smaller audience, but something very, very similar here in this section. Let's pretend for an example, this was also a beer festival or we had a beer garden. We can maybe try typing out something like beer garden to see if that's available as an interest. Perfect, we could add that in there. Maybe something like street food or something in this section. Just generally try to be creative. You're probably going to want to at least have maybe around 5 interests in this section, but the most important thing, even more important than having a set number of interests in this section, is just making sure that you have a pretty nicely sized audience. So based on everything that I had in here, within the local area that I effectively had, it's approximately around 63 million people, which is a really big audience. So if you basically have entered in your interests and after you've chosen your preference for the location targeting here in this section, if the potential reach is maybe only around, like 25 to 50,000 people, you're obviously going to want to increase the amount of interest that you have here in this section to probably have something that's, at least bigger than 100,000. My recommendation probably, if there are enough people in your area, would have this be, upwards of 1 million. It's okay if you have an interest that might be a little bit out of the ordinary, as Facebook normally optimizes this over time. So if you had something that's a little bit more on the fringe end of things, it doesn't perform that well, that's not what Facebook and Instagram are going to allocate the majority of your budget to anyways. So generally, have a nice mix of interest, quality over quantity, and prefer, a good sized audience here in this section. And then once we've done that, we simply could, if there's a specific location we wanted to target to as well, so maybe this was local to Los Angeles, we could enter that here in this section, and you can see how my reach actually substantially decreased. So just make sure that you have a nicely sized audience here, probably above 100,000, and I'd mainly shoot for maybe trying to get this 250 to 1 million plus, but it obviously is context dependent on how many people are in your area. So once you've done that, feel free to click continue, and we are actually done creating the campaign. And the next video, we are going to be hopping into straight showing you how to actually audit the campaign. Now, when it comes to auditing the performance of your Instagram growth campaign, the two main variables that go into the performance is one, what's the ad creative that we chose to use for the campaign? And second, who do we effectively choose to target with the campaign? But before we jump into actually showing you those two main variables, I just love to address how the new Instagram follower calculation actually occurs here. If many of you are familiar with things like conversion tracking, where you can basically kind of directly know if somebody clicks on your ad or views it and then purchases a ticket or something like that, we can tie it directly back to the ad campaign. Unfortunately, when it comes to things like Instagram growth, we can't actually differentiate between organic followers and then followers that come from the result of your ads. There unfortunately is no technical way possible to track that. So the next best thing that we are reporting on here in this section is, simply how many followers did you gain over the course of when you were running this. We're basically just tracking the net change to follower growth from when you started running the campaign to any updates or changes to that follower account. So the first important thing would be, just ask yourself kind of what's the organic growth rate that we normally see when we're not advertising when it comes to Instagram followers. So, if we normally get around 10 Instagram followers a day, we start running the ad and then maybe we see 25 followers a day, we'd probably know that this campaign is probably driving a little bit more closer to, 15 followers a day compared to, 25 and how the reporting works in this section. Second, you'd want to ask yourself, are there any other variables in play right now that could be driving Instagram follower growth outside of my campaign? And then third, you would also want to ask yourself, did we see a good amount of unfollows during the course of when we were running this campaign? As maybe, for example, it's showing that your campaign only drove 10 new followers, but you go into the Instagram Business Insights to check out how many people unfollowed you, and you saw that, maybe you had, 90 unfollows and you got 100 new followers in the course. So maybe your campaign actually did a substantially better job than you recognize of driving new followers, but because a lot of people ended up unfollowing and we tracked the net, it didn't look like your campaign was performing as good as it actually was. And the reason I wanted to show this example is on paper, this campaign looks fantastic. We have close to a 3-cent cost per follower here, almost 14,000 new Instagram followers. But if we scroll down to the bottom, we can actually see that only around 700 people clicked on this ad. So if we do the math, there is no way that 700 clicks in this case could have equated to close to 1,400 new Instagram followers. And the reasoning here was this advertiser saw a lot of good organic growth. They were also running ad campaigns on Instagram as well that were serving as another mechanism of discovery for people going to their Instagram and following as well. So just always try to keep in mind, what else could be in play that's driving follower growth, just to give you a little bit more clarity into, understanding this reporting, as it's by no means perfect, but it's basically the best thing that we technically have possible at the moment. Now, when it comes to the kind of average cost per follower, generally you're probably going to want to be trying to shoot for close to, $1 cost per follower. On average, this is closer to around $2 per follower. This is, of course, biased by high performers and low performers as well. But generally, you want to be striving to hopefully get yourself within that $1 to $2 per follower range. If you can get it below that, you're doing absolutely fantastic. But, even if you're having closer to a, maybe in between $2 to $3 cost per follower, there's probably a few variables that you could change to actually see some dramatic improvements in your performance. So let's go ahead and dive straight into those. First and foremost, the main variable that goes into performance is, what's the image or video creative that we're using for our campaign. So first and foremost, I'd always recommend use video over images. It's a lot more engaging. It tells a lot more of a story about what your brand and your organization is actually about. So if you ran it with images, didn't see the best results, I recommend try it again with videos. Secondly, make sure you're using creative assets that are properly full-sized for Instagram stories. So the dimensions are 1080p by 1920p. There's sometimes nothing more of a dead giveaway that people are looking at a piece of sponsored post if you're using kind of a square or a horizontal asset on Instagram stories that's not properly designed for where you're advertising. So just make sure that you're approaching this with properly full-size creatives, as it will make your content feel substantially more organic. The more organic it feels, the less likely it comes across as an ad, more likely people are to click to your profile and actually check things out. And then third, if you are using video content, try to introduce a new eye-catching visual element every couple of seconds. Our attention spans are only normally around 1 to 3 seconds nowadays, so it's important to really capture somebody's attention and give them context within the first couple seconds so that they continue watching throughout the entirety of the video. And I really like this video in particular here is they're constantly introducing new colorful eye-catching visual elements. They also had some overlays in their video that give context into, what's their brand, if we have a specific event coming up, what's going on. But a couple other ideas of what you could do. You could always include text that maybe says like, swipe up to follow. So people already have something in mind of what they might be doing when they swipe up or click to your Instagram profile. Or another creative mechanism, you could even do like an animated arrow pointing to kind of the Instagram profile icon in the top left. Is if people also click to that option as well, it'll take them to your Instagram profile. And it's sometimes nice to have kind of a visual element directing people to where you actually might want them to click. And in this case, it doesn't matter if they swipe up or they click on the top left, they basically go to the exact same place. So those are generally the main variables in regards to the creative, and make sure that you're not excessively A/B testing for your budgets. If you're only rolling with around a $5 to $10 daily budget, I'd say at max probably 2 creative variations, so maybe the 2 videos that you're testing. And if your budget is a little bit higher, you can include more, but generally one big pitfall that we can run into is if we excessively A/B test, our campaign's not reaching enough people per creative, and it's hard to actually figure out what's working. So that pretty much covers everything in regards to the creative. Now let's actually take a look at the targeting here in this case. So this creative was actually using the advanced targeting section, but let's switch it over to the simple targeting interface, which is what the vast majority of us are working with. So first and foremost, when it comes to Facebook interests, there isn't a right or wrong number to have in this section. It's just more important to actually have a pretty appropriately sized audience and that you're hitting interests that are relevant to your event. So if we're rolling with our food example, something that I might do here to get started is I might try typing out something like food festival here. Just start by typing out, different food related interests here in this section, basically things that are related to your brand or your organization. You wouldn't want to be putting a bunch of random stuff in here, maybe targeting people interested in movies if you're advertising a food event and there's nothing movie related. So just first and foremost, make sure that the interests that you had in your campaign are actually relevant to what you're advertising. And generally a good kind of ballpark to have, especially if you can see that these interests are, pretty big people in the area that we're advertising, is generally you want to be entering in, and I meant to put in street food really quickly there. Generally, you want to be having just a good mix of interests here that actually makes sense for what you're advertising. If you're maybe leveraging a ton of different interests that don't make sense, you're probably getting your creative in front of the wrong people. They're substantially less likely to interact and then go ahead and follow. And once again, there really isn't a right number here. I'd say prioritize quality over quantity, but probably a good recommendation would maybe be having close to around like 5 to 10 good quality interests in here. It's totally okay to have something that might be a little bit more fringe or niche in this section, as if it doesn't perform that well. As long as you're working with a big interest group to begin with, Facebook will optimize that over time and actually allocate budget to kind of better performing interests within the audience. So, in most cases, you can generally type out a couple interests, try typing out some stuff, and then, see, what other interests are actually pretty similar to what I've entered in here that I could maybe target with my campaign here. And then lastly, just make sure that you're actually targeting locations that make sense for your brand or your organization. If you're targeting people in a completely different country that can't attend your events, don't even understand your language, you're obviously probably not going to see the best results with your campaign. So just make sure that the location targeting option that you've chosen is actually relevant to how people can show interest in your events, how people could attend, or, if you're specifically really trying to advertise one event, just even think, how far might people be willing to travel to kind of attend my event and show interest in my brand and organization. So that kind of mainly covers it from the targeting. In all honesty, the creative is actually a lot more important than the targeting. As long as you're kind of targeting some general interest related to your event and you have good creatives, you should be running a pretty successful campaign here. And then lastly, if you ultimately want to take this to the next level, you can always experiment with the advanced targeting section. Now this is where you can incorporate tons of different other types of audiences, custom audiences, lookalikes, etc. So if you've collected a lot of data, you might want to explore this section as, let's say, for example, we didn't know if people interested in nightlife related events might outperform people interested in food related events. We could have kind of one audience in here that targets people interested in nightlife, and then we could have another audience in here that maybe targets people interested in food festivals. That way we're actually doing a little bit of A/B testing, so we could find out if one interest group actually ends up performing substantially better. Then we can make these revisions and modifications and focus our future campaigns, so we're targeting people that we already know based on the experience of past campaigns are ending up interested in what we are advertising here. So guys, hope this was helpful for you. Have yourselves an amazing rest of your day, and thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. Just let us know if you have any questions. Take care.